Welcome to Talk Tickers, where we break down the earnings calls that matter. Today, we are diving into Ormat Technologies, and let me tell you, their latest quarter wasn't just a beat. Nope, it was a signal, a big one, that something fundamental is shifting with this company.
So, let's just jump right into the big number, shall we? A whopping 17%. That's how much Ormat's adjusted earnings beat analyst expectations. And look, this wasn't some squeak-by win. This was a knockout, the kind of number that makes everyone sit up and pay attention.
So here's what we're going to do. We'll hit the big numbers, then we'll peel back the onion to see what's driving them. We'll look at the game plan for management, and then at the end, I'll give you our take on the stock.
All right, Section 1, Ormat's strong Q2 beat. And like I said, the market loved it. And why wouldn't they? This was a beat across the board, top and bottom line. A really solid quarter that just shores up that whole growth story.
Let's put some meat on those bones. You can see it right here. Adjusted EPS came in at 48 cents. That's that 17% beat we were talking about. And revenue, $234 million, which was over 5.5% better than expected. I mean, you can't argue with these numbers. It's just clean, solid execution.
Okay, Section 2, a deeper financial dive. So you see a beat that big, and the first question is, how? How'd they pull that off? And the answer is actually really interesting. It wasn't just one thing. It was a big shift in the DNA of their revenue.
Okay, so if you look at their revenue pie, yeah, the big slice is still their core electricity business. That's their bread and butter. But that's not the exciting part. The real story, the engine that drove this whole beat, was everything else. Those smaller slices are where things are really starting to pop.
And bam, here's the proof. Look at this chart. The core electricity segment dipped a little, down about 3.8%. No big deal, that was kind of expected. But look at the other two. Product revenue up nearly 58%. Energy storage up almost 63%. I mean, that's not growth, that's an explosion. This is exactly the kind of pivot investors get excited about, from a steady, mature business into these high-octane growth areas.
All right, Section 3, Management's Growth Blueprint. So how does all this fit into the grand plan? Let's talk about what management is telling us, because they're all about execution and, crucially, taking risk off the table for what's coming next.
And you heard it straight from the CEO, Doron Blachar. He came out and said, hey, record quarter, and pointed right to the strength in those growth segments we just looked at. The key takeaway here, this wasn't a lucky break, this is the plan in action.
And it wasn't just talk, right? They backed it up. They snapped up a 20-megawatt geothermal plant. They pushed 50 megawatts of new projects into construction. They locked down about $300 million in funding and tax partnerships. And then, and this is a big sign of confidence, they looked at their strong quarter and said, yeah, our full-year guidance still stands. Love to see it.
Okay, next section, context and catalysts. Now, let's zoom out for a second. Because it's not just what Ormat is doing right. There's something bigger happening in the background, a huge policy shift that's like a massive tailwind for the whole industry. So this new legislation, and I love this, the CEO called it the One Big Beautiful Bill, is basically a massive extension of key tax credits for geothermal and storage projects. And when I say massive, I mean it extends them all the way out to 2033. For a company like Ormat, that's a game changer. It's over a decade of certainty. It basically puts a government stamp of approval on their long-term financial model.
And you could hear this optimism in the Q&A session with analysts. Management dropped some pretty big nuggets. They said permitting times in Nevada, which used to take a year, are now getting done in as little as 2 months. Huge. They're also pushing in a new tech like enhanced geothermal, and maybe the biggest tidbit, they're in talks for 250 megawatts worth of deals to power data centers. You know, that AI boom needs a ton of energy.
So, what should we be watching for going forward? Well, you've got a few storage projects coming online later this year, which is great, but the real potential blockbuster, it's all about those power purchase agreements or PPAs. Landing a big deal with a hyperscaler, think one of the giant cloud companies, that would be a massive catalyst for the stock.
Okay, Section 5, the next call. So we've looked at the numbers, the strategy, the tailwinds. Now it's time to put it all together. What's it mean for the stock? Let's make the call.
The big question then, what is our call on Ormat? Where do things stand after a quarter like this one?
We're rating Ormat Technologies an outperform. Simple as that. It really feels like all the dominoes are lining up for them right now. We see a real path to sustained growth here, and we think the market could start to look at this stock in a whole new light.
And our reasoning boils down to 4 key things. 1, management has proven they can get it done.
2, they've got that massive policy tailwind we talked about. 3, their growth plan is already funded, so no worries there. And 4, that pivot into storage and products is clearly working, and it's working in a big way.
Okay, last section, the not financial advice trade. This is where we talk about an idea, a way you might think about expressing a view on the stock, kind of like you'd hear in a strategy meeting.
So here's the thought. We don't think the market is fully pricing in the possibility of them landing one of those giant data center deals. So one way to play that specific catalyst could be through long-dated call options. It's a way to get exposure to that potential upside over the next, say, 6 to 9 months without having to buy all the stock. It's a more capital-efficient bet on that specific piece of news.
You know, when you think about the insane demand for clean energy from all these data centers, the question for Ormat might not be if they sign a big PPA, but just how big it's going to be. Now, remember to do your own homework, because this is not financial advice.